The stuff that the indie comic book scene and DC were putting out were such high level that I was like, we need to talk about this, because April, while it might not have had the most or the biggest variety of comic books that we were definitely recommending every week on this channel, it had so many really spectacular comic books that we just can't ignore that. So today we're going to talk about the 6 best comic books from April 2025. Starting out with number 6, Aquaman 4 continues to impress as Arthur Curry joins forces with Arian and Vivian to protect the ocean from looming threats. Jeremy Adams blends mythology with modern superheroics, while John Tim stuns with beautifully rendered underwater landscapes. Fans are embracing the classic hero energy, strong character dynamics, and bold new direction, calling it one of the most promising takes on Aquaman in years. Now, I did have the pleasure of having Jeremy Adams on the channel recently, and we did talk about Aquaman a little bit. What I thought was interesting, because I'm getting this feel from this version of Aquaman, like he's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more testosterone fueled, and he almost feels like an absolute Aquaman or something like that. And I mentioned it, during the interview. And Jeremy's like, yeah, that's a rumor that's out there. Some people believe he may be the absolute Aquaman. And I'm kind of starting to think that it is, because he definitely has this different feel to him. We've seen more dangerous kind of versions of Aquaman in the past, but this one has like a kind of unique take to it. And I really love what he's doing with the character, because a lot of people like to make fun of Aquaman, like he's not an awesome hero. And I kind of get some of that. Yeah, he talks to fish or whatever, but he's brought out this kind of badassness in him. And it was really personified when he got that freaking trident, like sword thing that he's got the base, he's got the trident, like basically on the hilt, but then it can go to the end and become like a long trident as well. I thought that was a really cool idea and really well done by John Timms. And seeing Aquaman kind of as a badass, completely enraged, trying to find not only his wife and daughter, but the entire city of Atlantis that got sucked into that giant pearl. And when he went into it, you had, I think, Batman and Wonder Woman with him. Like, they see it becomes like the Omega symbol, obviously meaning Darkseid. And Darkseid is dead because he created the absolute universe or whatever. And it really makes you think, this probably is like a stealth absolute comic book that they haven't told anybody about. Or at least that's a really good theory, because I just love this new direction of Aquaman. And I thought Aquaman 4, as far as the series goes, which has been really good the entire time, like took it to another level, and definitely it has it in the running as one of the 10 best comic book series of the entire years thus far. Now, we're obviously very early into the year, but we're not that early. And Aquaman is definitely standing out as one of the truly badass comic books out there. DC is hitting another gear, and Jeremy Adams is doing a lot of the work there, to be completely honest. And kudos to him, and making Aquaman absolutely awesome again. I love seeing this. At number 5, Conan the Barbarian, number 20, captures everything fans love about the character: brutal action, raw emotion, and classic pulp storytelling. Jim Zub channels the spirit of Robert E. Howard with the savage tale set in the jungle, following Conan as he's hunted after Bullitt's death. Doug Braithwaite's artwork delivers grit and grandeur in equal measure, and fans are applauding the series for staying true to the roots of sword and sorcery storytelling. A shout out to Doug Braithwaite. He had been kind of like the other artist with Roberto Della Torre, but Roberto Della Torre isn't going to be doing Conan the Barbarian anymore, and he's kind of stepped up to being the primary artist on the book, and it feels like he stepped up. The art definitely got better. Not that it was bad before, but certainly noticeably improved in Conan the Barbarian number 20, which was really a return to form for me, for Jim Zub. Not that it had been bad, but it wasn't quite as good as those first 12, 15 issues. Once we got into that weird story with the lady, the art changed, and he got hit with the fangs of the serpent and all that kind of stuff. I was like, where is this going? Well, we finally find out, because he has this enormous fight with this like panther guy that ends up being called Zula, I think. And as they're fighting, you realize he's not a panther guy. He's a guy that can basically just morph into any animal character. He becomes like an eagle and all this stuff. And we finally find out the fangs of the serpent, which were introduced in another issue where Conan was stabbed with it, ends up being far more instrumental to the story moving forward. Really enormous ramifications on that. And Zulu's tried to say, hey, you are basically tainted with the spirit of the serpent or whatever. And Conan's like, no, it's not me. But then he finds out, oh, yes, you were. You were basically infected with this thing. So you get this really large-scale, awesome battle, but you get some really cool landscapes and all that kind of stuff. Really traditional comic book storytelling. And I thought Conan the Barbarian 20 was just an absolute cracker, a banger when it came to a comic book issue, and really reminded me why I was so high on Jim Zub's Conan the Barbarian run, why it was one of the 3 best comic books of all of last year, and is certainly in the running for one of the best comic book series of all of 2025 thus far. Conan the Barbarian, still one of the hottest books in the entire industry. There was a free comic book day comic book that came out this week. Hopefully people were able to find that and maybe jump on the bandwagon, because this gem from Titan Comics has been absolutely amazing, and everybody should be reading this. And I say this as someone that loves Robert E. Howard, that has a huge crush on Conan, is a big fan. I got my Conan shirt on right now, my favorite action scene in movie history, and Jim Zub is doing that character in that universe justice. Coming in at number 4, Absolute Wonder Woman 7 dives deep into Diana's mythological roots with a dramatic confrontation against Hades. Kelly Thompson weaves a story rich in character and lore, while Mattia de Elise, I probably said that wrong, brings the underworld to life with haunting, ethereal visuals. The issue blends emotional weight, powerful imagery, and deep respect for Wonder Woman's mythos, earning high praise from readers who love character-driven, visually stunning superhero tales. And certainly with the last 2 issues, beginning with issue 6, continuing into issue number 7. Mattia, I'm not going to say your last name because I'm going to butcher it, has absolutely destroyed it. Absolutely killed it with those stunning visuals. We got to see basically Diana Prince, Wonder Woman, fighting this weird chimera, like tiger, dragon thing, essentially to the death in front of Hades, because Hades was basically trying to teach her a lesson. The art was so good and the visuals are so spectacular. Even with Kelly Thompson was jumping back in time and showing earlier days of Diana growing up in hell with her surrogate mother or adopted mother, Circe. Like, I was still drawn into it. I wish Mattia would stay on this book, because I think it could vault Absolute Wonder Woman into being in consideration for like the best comic book of the entire year. That's how good the last 2 issues have been. Unfortunately, that is not going to be the case. Hayden Sherman is returning, but that was the right artist all along, and really put so much life into the work that Kelly Thompson is doing. And these last 2 issues are really the first times we've seen that initial premise that I was sold on, that I was like, wow, that's really good. If they pull it off, that could be really cool. Diana Prince, Wonder Woman, raised in hell, escapes and is now like tracking down artifacts and parts of mythology, and almost becoming like a god-like Indiana Jones type character, which is a whole lot of fun. These last 2 issues have highlighted why that concept really works. And then on the backstories, I think all that stuff was really good. I like her outsmarting Hades. I love the design on Hades. I like the fact that she was able to, save her mother, Circe. Even Circe looked cool. She had that mask and all that stuff. The only thing wrong with this book, and the reason that it's not number 1, because it's definitely in consideration and in the running for number 1, is there like 5 pages tacked onto the end of this thing that just did not need to be there. The story was already done. We didn't need to see her like flying with her mom and stuff like that. We already know that she had saved her. Why is this here? You could have added more spectacle and grandeur to the images of Diana Prince fighting this chimera essentially to the death. And it was such a powerful moment to really show you that this is Wonder Woman, where she's basically got him like in a rear naked choke kind of. And she's like, I don't want to kill this creature. Don't make me kill this creature. But if I have to, I will. And Hades like, there's only one winner, and basically forced her to kill him, which I thought was a really great moment, showing Diana had no ill will. Yes, they were fighting, did not want to kill this creature, but was forced to basically to save her mother. If this is what Absolute Wonder Woman is going to be moving forward, and it's less of the Etta Candy Tectorat or whatever the stupid monster was in the first 5 issues, then I'm all for it, and I will definitely be on board. These have been the best issues of absolute anything from DC's Absolute Universe thus far, totally eclipsing Absolute Batman, a series that I do enjoy, but this was absolutely epic and spectacular in my opinion. Coming in at number 3, G.I. Joe number 6. The series closes out its first arc with a bold issue that pits Duke against Cobra Commander in a high-stakes showdown. Joshua Williamson's storytelling and Tom Riley's expressive, detailed art come together to deliver an emotionally charged finale. Fans are calling it a masterclass in visual storytelling, pure action-packed comics, and that was just an amazing comic book. There are so many times when you get a cover. The most recent example, Hulk versus Godzilla, Godzilla versus Hulk, whatever it was. And you see on the cover, there's Godzilla, there's Hulk, looks like he's going to jump into his mouth or something like that. And then when you get into the book, there's literally no fight between Godzilla and Hulk. Godzilla and Hulk team up. Godzilla hulks out because you get some Hulk blood in him, but you don't get the actual confrontation that's teased on the cover. On the cover of G.I. Joe #6 is a spectacular tease that you are going to see a brutal fight between Cobra Commander and Duke, the first fight between the two in the Energon universe, and that's exactly what you get. And you get it in all of its spectacular beauty and glory and everything that you wanted to see. And it looked so freaking cool. Like there's this moment, I don't want to spoil too much stuff here, but screw it, I have to spoil this moment because they're like fighting there and they're going at it, and finally Duke gets the upper hand. He's able to pull his sidearm out, point it at Cobra Commander's face. He pulls the trigger, it bounces right off of Cobra Commander's face shield and goes right through his own shoulder. It was awesome, really spectacular stuff. This Cobra Commander is not quite like the sniveling weakling that you might have gotten from the G.I. Joe cartoon in the back of the day. Like, he is an enormous physical threat, and they fight toe-to-toe. He even gets a couple of saber blows, essentially, on Duke, incapacitating him, and Duke almost loses, but thankfully, he's able to keep Cobra Commander there for enough time that, one, his friends have come back, but number two, Cobra Commander can't allow, essentially, the brain bomb to explode, or he's going to die, too. So he ends up having to disable the device in a pretty spectacular manner. It was a good move because you knew Duke wasn't going to do that, even though he probably should have. So that was really, really cool. And then you got this really wild cliffhanger with Clutch that I thought was really, really cool. So that one absolutely lives up to the hype and exceeds it. G.I. Joe has been awesome under Josh Williamson, and I'm glad it's living up to that Duke hype because that Duke miniseries was really great. And this is like the perfect follow-on continuation of what was started there. I want to see more G.I. Joe versus Cobra happening within the pages of G.I. Joe before we start throwing, the big hitters like a Megatron or an Optimus Prime in here as well. But I imagine very quickly that we will be leading up to like a big G.I. Joe Transformers crossover event type thing. Maybe it's an event book written by Josh Williamson. Maybe Daniel Warren Johnson comes in for that. But it's certainly leading to big things, and G.I. Joe has been very spectacular. And at this point, I think G.I. Joe is the better Energon series between that and Transformers. Coming in at number 2, Green Lantern 22 showcases Jeremy Adams' strong handle on classic Hal Jordan storytelling, delivering a thrilling clash with Hector Hammond while introducing intriguing cosmic threads. Zermanico's art bursts with cosmic energy and scale, offering breathtaking visuals that perfectly complement the narrative. The issue balances personal moments with universe-expanding developments, and readers are praising it as the kind of spacefaring adventure that made them fall in love with Green Lantern in the first place. You're like looking at the cover like, okay, Hector Hammond returns, after basically being incarcerated by the DEO or whatever, but now he's got his powers back. Him fighting Hal Jordan, that's enough for me. And that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Green Lantern 22. The fucking Bane of Strangers in this book. Hal Jordan goes to hell. They discover a long-lost Green Lantern that's in hell. And those aren't even like the biggest reveals. We get like the original Blue Beetle. And I'm not talking Ted Kord. I'm talking the original Blue Beetle shows up in this comic book. And it felt like it was part of a comic book event. It didn't feel like a normal comic book issue from Jeremy Adams on Green Lantern. It was that spectacular. It's just like, it's what you want from a comic book. It's what you want from superhero comic books, to where you don't want to turn the page because what you've just realized is so cool that you want a moment to breathe, but you have to turn the page because you're realizing that he's building and building and building, and it's just getting better and better. You want the story to go up in excitement and end at the highest point. And I think Green Lantern 22 absolutely was a masterclass in that kind of storytelling, to where it just completely grabs you by the collar and drags you along with the story with so many really interesting key elements in there. And there's even like a really cool sit down between director Bones and Hal Jordan, and Hal Jordan's giving him the fucking guff. I love it when Hal Jordan's kind of an asshole, and he was definitely giving Bones the business when it came to a verbal takedown. And that is a just fantastic, really fun issue. And somehow it's not the best issue that I think was released in April 2025. I find it completely shocking that it wasn't the best, because I love that series. I think it's the best ongoing at DC. It's one of the better issues that we've gotten of Green Lantern out of Jeremy Adams. And it still wasn't number 1. There was actually a better DC comic book and a better comic book overall in April, and I'm shocked by this. At number 1, Superman 25, Joshua Williamson continues his celebrated run with a milestone issue that pits Superman against XL, a powerful Lex Luthor clone. The story blends emotional weight with blockbuster action as it digs deeper into Luthor's psyche while setting the stage for new storylines. Eddy Barrows and Dan Mora's vibrant and dynamic art elevates every moment, and fans are loving the emotional stakes, the return of classic Superman themes, and the sheer visual spectacle. And I forgot to even mention that Jamal Campbell's in there. Jamal Campbell started out the Superman run where we had like the good Lex that was creating Supercorp that was going to be aiding with Superman, you know, because Lex knew that he needed to be in prison, all that kind of stuff. And we go back in time and recontextualize how some of that happened. And it turns out Lex Luthor not quite as benevolent as he would have led you to believe, at least the way that the story was going, kind of saying, hey, this was his plan all along. But somewhere along the line, Lex Luthor did lose his memory, basically lost who he was. When he came back, he didn't like who he was, and he doesn't want to be that anymore. But unfortunately, a little dark secret from his past comes up in the form of XL, and we just get this really cool, weird, black, kryptonite-powered Lex Luthor going out there and finally trying to end the Man of Tomorrow forever, Superman himself. But Superman has backup this time because Lois Lane is now Superwoman. She's received the powers of Zod, who's now powerless because of all the stuff that happened in Absolute Power. Maybe it's not the greatest change in the world. It's not something that I was actually looking for or really wanted, but it's played out pretty well in Josh Williamson's run there. And he gave Lois an amazing moment when Lex Luthor, his eyes are turning green, and he's telling her, not only am I going to kill you, not only am I going to kill your husband, Superman, when I'm done, I'm going to kill your whole family, that boy of yours. And before he could even say his name and explain to him what he was going to do to John Kent, like she completely loses it and almost goes like Kryptonian nuclear on his ass. It was a great moment. We got the return of Lex as he was going to prison. He had to escape. He's got the big green and purple suit on or whatever, and he needs to make things right. And right in front of Superman and Superwoman and his daughter, the real Lex essentially blows the head off of XL. Like right in front of him, and Superman's like, no, you can't do it. It was a really cool moment, beautifully well illustrated, and a real jaw dropper for me. And I thought, bloody well done. That's how you do like a semi-milestone issue. I don't consider 25 issues to be a milestone, but they do sell it that way. But it's that story all the way through. And I thought it was a great ending and probably the best issue of Superman, you know, not counting miniseries or Action Comics, but just the Superman flagship title that we've gotten since Peter J. Tomasi was writing Superman, which I thought was an amazing time on the series. Now, Josh Williamson hasn't been quite as consistent as Peter J. Tomasi was, but when he hits the highs, he definitely lives up to that kind of hype and that kind of run that was absolutely spectacular. And Superman 25 even beats out, at least in April, Green Lantern 22. Green Lantern, I still think, is the best ongoing series at DC. Superman is definitely a good ongoing series. Not quite as consistent as Green Lantern, but for 1 month, it was better. I definitely want to hear from you guys. What did you think was the best issue in all of April of 2025? Were you more of a Transformers 19 person? Were you more of an absolute Batman person? Is there another series out there that you thought eclipsed this stuff? Because I thought these were, without a doubt, the six best comic book issues that I read all month. If you like what we're doing here on Think Critical YouTube and you would like to be part of the family and support the mission that we're trying to accomplish here every single day, talking about comic books, highlighting the good, pointing out the bad, and all that kind of stuff, the best place to do that is Think Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. There's a button right here, and I hope to see you there very, very soon.